not sure.
Yeah.
I thought you would have been all over that.
I think I briefly saw it, but I didn't have time to respond.
Oh, fair enough.
G'day everyone, how you going?
He's back.
I'm back.
All right.
Hang on a sec. Might as well. Obviously, it's 6 p.m. I think we'll just let a few extra people join. We've got a few people joining in on the stream as well. So, yeah.
Evening, Frank. I also wasn't sure if people think 6 o'clock is like roll up whenever you want sort of thing.
G'day, Frank. Hey, Jordan, I've actually got a quick question for you, mate. With SDDLs. Do you know of any way to be able to actually create ACLs with like create an ACL as an object and then convert it as a string into a string?
Yeah, the .NET functions have got to convert to stdl function.
That'll
so you
convert
call that and you specify what components you want, and it will give you the stdl for you.
Okay, cool. I knew that you could go the other way, but because there's a command line that you can convert from, but you can't convert to, and I was like, oh. So, okay, that's great.
Yeah, you should be able to do both.
Yeah, okay. Alrighty. Just gonna, do you want me to run the PowerPoint, or Wayne, do you want to drive it?
I'm right for you to drive it, that's fine. I saw that you had it open, I'm like, no, Michael can have it tonight. I just went in there and added some AWS news, that's all. Which feels funny. Feels funny going in there and seeing all the Azure news already added. I'm like, what? That's my thing.
You're like, what is this voodoo?
Yeah.
So I know at our last meeting 2 months ago, we joked about how the previous meeting to that, we were joking that the more and more cases, every time we say, oh yeah, we'll do a meetup this month, definitely happening, and then the Rona kicks off. I've noticed last time it was scheduled, it was really kicking on, and now there's 6 cases just announced in Queensland. So I'm thinking that.
I mean, I blame Michael.
I can't hear you.
Hey, I've been vaccinated.
I got my first one, and my God, my arm the next day was just dead. It was shocking. Still got to go back for number 2.
Oh, lucky number 2. Oh, mate. Okay. Actually, no, Wayne, are you able to do the share? Because I can't show the team session as well as do the share, unfortunately.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Just give me a minute.
It's a bit wonky, so.
Oh, apparently I closed it. I was 100% dependent on you. Give me a second. It's like it knows. Like it's like OneDrive knows. You know, you're waiting on it. It's going to go slow.
That's the same with printers. They know you're in a hurry.
Don't get me started on printers.
Right. Especially in 2008 R2 clusters with non-supported drivers.
All right, let me see.
Stop looking at my infrastructure.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is going to work. Let me know how this goes.
Yeah, that looks fine.
Yep.
Yeah, that looks good.
Okay, sweet.
Alrighty. Do you want me to kick it off, Wayne?
Yeah, go on.
Wander through the news. Alrighty. So.
Are we recording?
Yes, we are recording. We're actually streaming live as well. So, g'day to everybody in the user group, in the team session, as well as g'day to everyone online. Welcome to this month's meetup. We're just going to quickly jump through. I'm your host, Michael. And then obviously we have Wayne here. Also we have Alex, Mitchell, and Pablo, who are our facilitators. I'd like to use the word facilitators. It's probably, I don't even need that. I've got my boom mic on. So anyway, we're proudly sponsored by Hudson. They've been, before the coronavirus came out, They were lending us their room. Obviously, things have changed, but they're still a sponsor. Also, a huge thanks to ScriptRunner for also paying our meetup costs. I really, really, really appreciate that. And then finally, InSync Technology / Rapid Circle. So a little bit more news on that. So we'll be jumping on to the next slide. Okay. Wayne, you can, do you want to do the news or you want me to do the news? I can probably talk about a couple of things. You're muted, by the way.
Yeah, you can do the sorry, I gotta share my screen and mute and unmute. You can do the Azure news if you like, seeing as you added. I mean, I can talk about any of these things if you want me to.
Okay, cool. I'll just quickly go through it. Yep. Tons and tons of new Azure features are coming out. So we've got Azure Sphere, that version 21.09 is in GA. So one of the key things I kind of wanted to bring up, I know it's not, it can be brought up next month, but it's just something that, to have at the back of your mind. If you've got Azure's ASR implemented, TLS 1.0 and 1.1 will be deprecated on November the 15th. So you can go ahead and update that to a TLS 1.2. Azure Function Runtime version 4 is now in public preview, which is supporting a whole bunch of different language and runtime versions. So on .NET 6, you've got in-process and isolated processes now. There's Node, Python, Java, PowerShell, and some custom handlers. Obviously, we also have Azure AD joined VMs are now reached GA. There's a GA of the run command in AKS. Also, Microsoft implemented screen capture protection for Azure Virtual Desktop, which is pretty interesting stuff. So essentially, you can deploy your Azure AD, your Azure Virtual Desktops are essentially you can't capture screens and record stuff, so that's pretty cool. So the Azure App Service Availability Zones is now also in GA now, so that's really good. And there's a couple other ones there, which is just the Azure Files now supports SMB 3.1. So there's a whole bunch of little bits and pieces with that, which it just ships with 2 additional encryption modes, which is just AES 128 GCM and 256 GCM. And PSARM, which I don't know if there's been really, I know that was mentioned beforehand, but I just kind of want to reiterate it from the PowerShell side, is that PSARM is no longer being developed or actively supported. It's considered end of life. So make sure you're not using it anymore and consider moving to Bicep.
Move to Bicep, that's right.
Yep. So that's pretty much it for the Azure news. So yep.
Let me try and navigate. Give me a second. There we go. Yeah, so there's some pretty big AWS news this month as well. I didn't actually go back to the previous month, so there will be a little gap, but they announced the new New Zealand region is coming. So over the next few years, they're going to be developing a multi-availability zone region in New Zealand, which is awesome. Elasticsearch has been renamed to Amazon OpenSearch, and this is based on some licensing issue. Anyone who knows anything about open source licensing knows that they get very heated, these debates, and that's what caused this name to get renamed, this product to get renamed. If you haven't seen Amazon FSX before, it's worth looking at. It actually blows my mind how good Amazon FSX is. They've announced NetApp ONTAP support now. They previously had the best Windows Server support I've seen in a public cloud. Windows Server file system, this is. That's what the FS stands for. And now they've got NetApp ONTAP as well. It is a really good product. Super excited about that. EFS, Elastic File System, that is, now supports intelligent tiering, just like S3 does. And CloudFormation is getting better to use slowly, which is nice. For someone who'd done ARM and then tried to do CloudFormation, CloudFormation was like not nice. But they've now made it optionally roll back. So you used to deploy something, you might do 10 deployments or 10 resources as part of a deployment, and it would get to the 9th one, fail, and then just roll all the way back again. So now you can optionally roll back and save yourself some sanity, and you can even debug at that 9th deployment and try and find out why it failed and things like that. So they're all awesome improvements on the AWS side. Over to you, Michael.
Yeah, so this was just a bit of an impromptu slide that I've added. into the deck, and I just quickly wanted to talk about the sponsor of InSync. So as of this month, InSync/Rapid Circle will be the last time that they will be officially listed as a sponsor on the Meetup group, and that's because myself and Alex Laurie have resigned from InSync/Rapid Circle, so we will no longer be working there. So yeah,
we're looking for a new sponsor, I suppose, when we're meeting in person again.
Yep, that's exactly right. Yep.
Cool.
We'll just quickly talk about what's happening in the next couple of months. So October, basically we will be we've got Joshua King. He's going to be giving a talk on
Chocolatey in October.
Yep, on Chocolatey. So Joshua King, if you're not familiar with, he's the Microsoft PowerShell Cloud and Data Center MVP. He recently joined Chocolatey. So I'm super excited to see that. Everyone always got a bit of a soft spot for Chocolatey because it's so soft. And so in November we'll be looking at, hopefully, provided that there's an actual no lockdowns or anything like that, we're going to be trying to actually organize some sort of social event, whether that's in the city. We're still trying to work out what we're going to do there. Whether it's around my place, who knows? We'll try and figure that out. So that's just a bit of heads up what's happening in the coming months. So call for speakers. We're always looking for speakers. So if you're interested in a topic, any sort of infrastructure topic, whether it's Python, PowerShell, it can be a language, it can be anything to do with infrastructure. You can approach myself or Wayne, Alex or Mitchell. Just please hit me up. You can hit me up on Twitter if you're watching online. And just basically we can lock you guys in for a talk. So yeah. But anyway, without further ado, the man of the hour, Heiko, is going to be here to present on how to make PowerShell a real solution in 5 steps. Over to you.
Ooh. Okay. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Wayne. Okay, well, that was quick. Okay. Not prepared. Yeah, thanks for having me. I think it's the 3rd time. I have the honor to talk about our little PowerShell management solution. And so because it's the 3rd time, I would really keep the introduction itself pretty short. And then what I really want to show you is what we have done since the last time we met, which I think was around the same time last year or in October or something. And we did quite a bit. So let me I will start to bore you with a few slides first, and then I'm going to go to various systems so I can just really show you around a little bit what we've actually done. So let me just start sharing. I still like the fact in Teams that when you start sharing, the whole control panel is just going out of sight. That's really great. All right, so just a quick introduction of who we are. So I'm from ScriptRunner. We are based in Germany, and we are into PowerShell management. So the goal of what we are doing day in, day out is to kind of help people to simplify the way that they develop, manage, and delegate PowerShell. That's basically what it is. And we've been around for a couple of years, started to be more present in the international space 2.5 years ago, when I joined the company. So this is part of our team. That is me. So you find me on all the usual channels on Twitter, and I could later on, at the end, I can just paste all my contact data into the chat. And from the picture, you might sense that I have a little bit of a weak spot for this little Australian rock band. We are also pretty much into really also supporting the PowerShell community and the Microsoft community in general. So that's why we are part of your your user group, but we're doing a lot of other stuff. And we also, I think we mentioned it before we started, that we have this PowerShell cheat sheet, which is actually, I could say, get help for your office wall that can help you when you're with your day-to-day business, working with PowerShell and stuff like that. We have other things. We have an email PowerShell security ebook that you can, that we also had. It's about 140 pages and stuff like that. So that's also pretty interesting. I think I even have no, that's the wrong one. Too many slides. It's this one here that you can also, and I will paste that link also in the chat later on, which is 140 pages long, and it covers all the built-in PowerShell security stuff, which I think is also pretty helpful when you're working with PowerShell on a daily basis. Yeah, so PowerShell management and making life easier with PowerShell. What does that actually mean? And so from our perspective, there are kind of two ways to use PowerShell. So here are two pictures that I try to show the two different ways and how they maybe differentiate from each other. So on the left side, you can see like, okay, this is, you start using PowerShell, you're writing your scripts, and they are, I don't know, in your emails, in a OneDrive, in a folder, whatever. And because you wrote them, you know exactly where to go to if you want to spin up a new VM, create a new user, creating reports, changing permissions or whatever, which is great because that's how you started, and it's your scripts, and you know how to run them, and you have the permissions, and you know what to do and how to do it, and which is, I think, great for the start when you start using PowerShell. Now on the right side, this is not surprisingly where ScriptRunner then comes into the picture, where the idea is to kind of organize everything around PowerShell in a more standardized way. So on the left side, again, we see things like, okay, the scripts are all over the place. We also see many organizations, and funny enough, no matter how small or big they are, you typically maybe have 2 or 3, maybe 5 people who are really into PowerShell, but out of that expert circle, there are not many people really knowing a lot and working with PowerShell on a day-to-day business. And that's because really we have this PowerShell know-how bottleneck. And then we have all things around security, how to handle the credential, because if I want to give a script to somebody, I will not make this person global admin in my Azure subscription, or I don't want to train them how PowerShell works and stuff like that. So it has to be an easy way to do that in the sense of not everybody has to become a PowerShell expert, which of course would be great, but would, I guess, would not happen. So it's about, so the aim is here, like thinking about people in help desk, or maybe junior admins, or maybe even help desk users to enable to use ScriptRunner. And one of the key elements to achieve that is turning a PowerShell script into something that really everybody can use in an automatic way. So what we are doing, and what I'm going to show you, is that you have what kind of PowerShell script you have, you put it into ScriptRunner, you automatically get a web user interface. Because we are looking into the synopsis, we're looking into the parameter descriptions that are hopefully there, because they help us to shape and to the look and feel of that input form. And then if you have parameters like the date time, will automatically translate into a date time picker. And if you're using reg expression, then we check this as well. If you have, I don't know, validation sets or whatever. So everything that you have in your script is automatically translated into a web user interface. So no need for extra coding. And then of course you can control what you actually want to display to these users. And that might differ between different groups of users, because some might be able to do more things than others. That brings us back to this idea of standardization, where you say, okay, I have a particular way how things should happen, and I have the parameter values set as I want it, and then that's what I do, and then I just hide them from the user. because they cannot change it, so they have to care about it. So only the things that really needs the attention of the user is actually being visible here, and that simplifies the way for the users and gives you the control about what is actually happening in the background. So what are the default settings that always happens, no matter if it's done interactively by user A, B, or C, or maybe it's been done scheduled, or maybe triggered via the REST API, which are actually covered these 3 different ways of how you can actually organize that. You could say, okay, there's a user doing things. You can have housekeeping processes going on schedule, and then using the REST API to allow, I don't know, ITSM system, workflow systems to also trigger scripts or actions, as we call them. And what an action is, I will show you later on. So the idea really is to standardize everything around PowerShell, to centralize everything around PowerShell, which means when we talk about scripts, when we talk about the modules, the credentials, everything is managed in a central way. And then it becomes, as we just saw, I think, really accessible for almost everybody, which is a great thing, because that really brings the people who are writing the PowerShell scripts onto a totally different level, because it's not just being something that you do in a corner, in the dark, in the cellar somewhere. You're doing some PowerShell magic and nobody knows actually what's going on there and how you do it and how the company benefits from it. So with turning it into something that actually everybody can use, it's also something that helps you in getting maybe more relevance in your organization, for example. And because we're doing this centralization piece, we also have a monitoring possibility to just see what script ran at what time, who triggered it, how long did it take, was there an issue, stuff like that. So because, and we will see that, then if you use ScriptRunner, it's not the user who runs the script. The users are triggering the execution, but actually ScriptRunner is running all the scripts. And that's because we centralize all the bits and pieces. That's why we have these monitoring possibilities. And the integration piece where we can say, yeah, it's not just a user, it could be an SAP system, or it could be ServiceNow that we allow to trigger scripts as well. And so the way we do that, and that comes back to this 5-step approach. So what we're doing, we're centralizing scripts and modules. So here you see a little screenshot, and I will show you that in the system later on, of course. So we have the scripts, we have the modules. Of course, you could, in the background, you could have like GitHub or whatever, and you're synchronizing scripts down to ScriptRunner once a script has been tested and it's been moved to the production branch. You can do that, of course. The second step really is thinking about credentials and the permissions. And so credentials means they're stored centrally, and they could be even stored in password servers. So at the moment, we support 3 of them: CyberArk, Pleasant, and Psychotic. Which even further centralizes the whole landscape and also allows you to, of course, use all that great stuff that you can do with password servers, like rotation, stuff like that, and make sure ScriptRunner is always using the right credential when there is when there's a script that needs to have a connection to Exchange, ADE, Azure ADE, AWS, or whatnot. So that really helps. Also from the centralizing perspective. And then if you look at this part here, where we have ScriptRunner, it's really, we call this execution proxy. And that's because ScriptRunner is the only instance that needs to have access to the scripts, to the credentials, and to the backend systems. Where on the other hand, if you have the users over here, they strictly only talk to ScriptRunner. So these users over here, they don't need to have any permissions or access to your on-premises or cloud or hybrid services or whatever, because what you actually do, in ScriptRunner, you decide what kind of use cases, what kind of tasks these people should be allowed to trigger, and they just do it via the web interface. So they know it's easy, and as said, there's no need to make these people become part of your admin groups or whatever. They could be just normal domain users, and you decide what they are able to do based on the configuration within ScriptRunner. And then coming back to this simplifying piece of, okay, we're translating a script into a web user interface, and you decide what's actually selectable here, what is visible, what is not visible. And then step by step, you can add all kinds of use cases and delegate them to a group of people. And the nice thing about, if you, let's say you have a scenario where, okay, we have two different groups, and one is responsible for, let's say, a particular Azure subscription, and the other one is maybe responsible for other Azure subscription or for VMs, and they should have different possibilities. Like, okay, they can spin up VMs with I don't know, 4 CPUs up to 8 CPUs. And the other one should be allowed to spin up VMs with 18 CPUs and more, so it's 32 or whatever. And if you have this different scenarios, you don't have to make changes to your underlying scripts. They can be exactly the same in both scenarios. It's just the management layer on top of it, which is ScriptRunner. This is where you make this, where you just make different choices and decide what the users are able to use and what are the defaults in the background. And then coming back to the integration part, so we have, as I said, we have this interactive approach, running scripts by user. We have this scheduled approach, of course, and then we have this integration piece where we call them automation connectors, where they can be triggered from the outside, from machines that are allowed to connect to ScriptRunner and to tell us what script to run, what are the parameters, what are the values, and then that's been done via the ScriptRunner engine as well. All right, so with this, I would switch to the first VM to just show you what that means, and also covering the things that we've done since we talked about what I just covered last year. And one of the main changes here is, in the past, we had 3 different user interfaces. The admin app, where you configure everything, scripts, credentials, stuff like that. We had the Delegate app, and we had a self-service end user app. And last year, we started to build our new portal. And then in the beginning, the portal looked like this. And that's because I'm logged in here as a help desk user, normal domain user. And this person is allowed to trigger whatever has been delegated to this person. And that's why we have this run app right here. And so what we see here, all these tiles represent, in the background, represent a script with the right credential, with everything that we need in order to get the job done, like in this case, creating a new team, or in case of Azure, to create a new VM, or starting out of Office, or creating reports like this, or whatever the use case might be. So this is what the user are seeing when they allow to do things that you have delegated to them. And maybe we just start this one here. So what you can see here, though, just some nice fancy stuff. You can work with color schemes. You can add logos to it. So hopefully the user remember, like, okay, this is something about Azure, and then this is something about Exchange and stuff like that. So overall, if you're familiar with what we've done in the Delegate app in the past, it's really much more modern. It's much more fun to work with that stuff. You have, of course, the same possibility to decide what actually this user is allowed to do. And again, I will show you that in the configuration piece, how that works. Like, okay, this user is allowed to spin up these VMs in these regions, and that's the available VM sizes. And that's it. So everything else that, of course, comes with the new ACVM commanded, like static IP addresses, yes or no, SSD, HDD, whatever, that's all in the background. It's still there. And you can see over here, it's all based on the script that we have on the ScriptRunner machine to create a new virtual machine. And I could, maybe just for the fun of it, we are starting to build a Ubuntu machine, maybe a small one. I want to save money, and then because I have put everything that is necessary, so we saw, of course, if there are mandatory parameters, of course, they have to be filled, and then I can click here on run. So what happens now is, in the background, ScriptRunner takes this information, this input and starts to run this script together with the things that are also pre-configured in the background. And we will take a look at this, of course, later on as well. So while that is running, of course, we could take a look at other scenarios here. So here I have a list of all the available actions, and that's because that's the things that I've actually delegated to this person. And of course, it could be just 4 of them, or it could be 20 or whatever, and they're organized here based on the tabs. So it's pretty easy to navigate if there are people, and helpers people are typically this kind of people that have a more broader range, broader variety of actions. And so what you also can do, which also is new, since we created this portal, what you can see right here in the URL is that if I'm switching between the actions, each action has a unique ID. And this unique ID enables us to do things like, and I'm switching here to another browser, just for the fun of it, to integrate this use case, which, as we saw in the background, is based on the PowerShell script and all the different configuration pieces, and just integrate that into whatever website we want, which means if that would be a self-service portal or, I don't know, a SharePoint website or whatever, you could just say, okay, I take the same use case that we just looked at from the portal perspective, and I say, okay, I want this to become part of that website, and we can see the same funny little things that are changed here because I did some changes in the parameter description just to show, it becomes available immediately. So what happens here is that it is really, it's an iframe. And because, as I said, each action has a unique ID, you can say, okay, I want this action 158. I want to integrate it into this website, and I have a couple of configuration settings, like, do you want to show the description? Do we want to show the name and stuff like that? So you can set some defaults. And then any of these possible use cases that you want to delegate, and I mean, that's basically one of the major things where companies come to us, because the admin says, please, I don't want to spin up the 20th VM today. Couldn't that be somebody in help desk, or maybe even the line of business users, to do it? And I have the PowerShell scripts, but I would not give it to them. I'm just create something in ScriptRunner and delegating this stuff to these people, and then it's off of my desk. And they do it in the right way because I have pre-configured that. And so it could be, I don't know what I have here, creating a SQL database backup or stuff like that. So whatever the use case might be, you can integrate that into whatever website, and that really brings, let's say, that stuff that in the background we have this PowerShell stuff into a world where nobody needs to know even that PowerShell exists, because it's really just something that is based on this web user interface. And
sorry, Heiko, I just want to quickly jump in for a sec. Are you able
Sure.
to zoom in on the on your browser? It's just that the guys via stream are having a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, maybe I'm just.
How's that, guys? Is that good?
Looks fine to me.
I'm just checking. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Glenn's happy with that. Okay.
Perfect. All right. So, yeah, going back to the use case that we just had, where, okay, somebody created a new VM, and you saw this report that coming back telling the user, okay, it has been created successfully. And so this was triggered by this user right here. So and we will take a look at, okay, what can I do and what can I see from the admin's perspective, what happened there, and we will be there in a minute. So just want to finish this one up here, and maybe also make this a little bit bigger. So the idea of this, as we call the portal widgets, is really bringing each use case into an environment where the user is just working day in, day out, and they just do and allowed to do whatever is configured in the action. And that's a big change that we saw with organizations really now thinking about, okay, is there use cases like password reset, creating an out of office for somebody who called in sick or stuff like that? Could that be something that we can now build with a PowerShell script in the background and then make it available for HR people, because they only have to maybe select the notification, and because it's a date time parameter, we automatically display this date time picker here. So it's really pretty easy. And so it's nothing that, again, has to be done by the IT department or even by the help desk people. And so that's really where we also see that make PowerShell something that really can be used in a much broader range. And so the question is, okay, how did we do that? So as I said, it all starts with the scripts. Now here we are in the admin app that we still have, and that still will be around for a couple of months, I think. But the ultimate goal is to move all the functionality that we have into our new portal. And especially for the scripts, that's pretty cool news, because with the scripts, with the portal, let me just open the portal again. Too many tabs here. Because what you can do, for example, with the portal is that, because now I'm logged in now as an administrator, right? So just now here I'm logged in as Tina, just normal domain user. That's why she only sees these two tiles. Here I'm logged in as an administrator, and I have all the stuff that me as an administrator is allowed to do, which includes working with scripts. And that is really pretty cool, because you cannot not just add new ones, which of course, and or create new ones. You could also edit the scripts via the browser. So we could go into the script, and I can see, I can take a look at the code. I can check it out. I can make changes to it. I can check it in again. Hopefully do some good comments, and I have a change history. I can see where it's actually being used, and so that's really something that really helps to work with existing scripts, of course, because you can just really use that user interface. But it also is pretty cool to import new scripts, where you say, okay, I want to add new scripts. And by the way, you will maybe wonder what that right here is. Within ScriptRunner, you can have a multi-team configuration. You could say I have one ScriptRunner instance, and then I have an Exchange team, and I have an Azure team, and I have an AD team working with PowerShell, with that credential, with targets and whatnot. But I want to make sure that the team, I don't know, US is not messing around with the scripts and credentials from another region or from another platform or whatever. So you can decide who is the owner of that object. And object means could be a script, it could be a credential, it could be a query or whatever. Or you can make it something that belongs to maybe everybody. And then you can choose the files that you want to, the scripts that you want to add. You can decide in which folder structure you want to store them. The folder structure is pretty important, because based on the folder names, we automatically tag the scripts and everything else based on this names first. You can always change this manually, but automatically we just take the information from the name of that folders. And what you can also do, which is pretty cool, we have this, I think 1,700 scripts being available on GitHub. And you could just choose scripts that from there that you would like to add to your existing configuration. And that's something that also, because we have this in the portal now, is available here. You can have a preview on the scripts as well, and then you can say finish, and then the scripts, okay, I have the same name, okay, in the same folder, okay. Then maybe I choose something different. Maybe I choose something different. I'm not sure. Maybe I take this one here. See, and maybe I make it, I think I have to just put it into a different folder. I think that was the issue. And then the script becomes available. So by the way, talking about the scripts that we have on GitHub. So since the last time we added quite a bit of new scripts here. For example, we added a completely new set of scripts for Citrix, for example. And we added new scripts for Teams because the module for Teams is kind of changing every day somehow. So you can still go there, of course, and just download the whole set of scripts. That's still there, but you can also, as I said, you can just import them via the portal. And of course, if you want to create a new script, it could be an empty one, but maybe, and we're going to cover, maybe to take a look at the queries as well. You could say, okay, I want to create a query script, and I want to have this. I want to have some help with it. To say, okay, there is a template, and again, this template comes from our GitHub repo, and we're going to change and add new templates here. And there's also going to be a way to, instead of pointing to our GitHub repo, to point your GitHub repo. It's not there yet, but that's going to come. And here, as a result, what you see here as a structure is that whatever you do, whatever information you want to get at the end, it should end up in these two variables in this SRX environment result list and result list 2, because this is the information that on one side the user is seeing, and on the other hand, what we're actually using when we execute the scripts. And I will show you what that means when we look at the queries. So what that really means here, because we have this functionality now here in the portal, you can really do all the stuff directly in the browser in the latest edition, which will come out by the end of this week. I hope we will have, and I have another machine where I already did that. You can already, for example, also delete scripts from here. And if this script is used somewhere, you get information like, oh, okay, it's been used in this action. Do you want to really do that, and stuff like that? So to see the dependencies and stuff like that. What's also pretty cool is that if you're making changes, to your scripts, or you have kind of a history of scripts, let me just go for one where I made some changes here. You could take this information and where is it? No. All right. What have I done? What I actually wanted to show you is, okay, maybe let's make some changes here again. Check it in. Because what you can do is you can have a diff. You can see, okay, what has been changed since the last check-in. So that also helps you to, of course, find out, okay, if you're looking at a script, maybe somebody else has modified and something goes wrong and stuff like that. So that's also something that really helps in how to manage your scripts. And that's something that we added with the portal, which I think is pretty cool. And coming back to, we just started this action to create a VM in Azure. I want to go back to the portal, because right here, because I'm the administrator, I can take a look at all the things that have been done. And here I can even see that there was an error when I wanted to list the name of my VMs, but I can see that, okay, this user Tina, she started to create a new VM in Azure, and I can go into the reports and I can see which user started it, when was it, what was the action, what was the actual backend system that we used, and what was the credential. And I see the parameters, and we only saw a few of them in the interface, because all the other stuff, as I said, is pre-configured in the background. And that's how we always create this particular VM, and then you get all the detailed information here. And so you see all the data of all these activities, because it's always ScriptRunner who executes all that stuff. We have that centralized view on all the activities, no matter what the issue are. And I understand this one because my VM environment is not running. That's why Connect my server didn't work, of course. So for troubleshooting purposes, and you can just say, I want to see everything, just the things where things went wrong, or and then of course you can also compare reports. You can drill down to particular actions or to particular targets, and so the idea really is to have a full view on all the stuff that happens with your PowerShell scripts. Again, no matter if it's triggered by a user, if it was a scheduled stuff, or if it was something triggered by the REST API, the automation connectors. And so something we added on top of this technical dashboard, coming back to things that we changed, that we added, is we created a efficiency dashboard, so to speak. So typically, this is more kind of the the management view. Like, okay, why do we automate? How do we benefit from it? And what you can do is, for each of these use cases, you can decide how much time you actually save by doing things in an automatic way, and then we calculate that based on how often this action ran. And you can create an hourly wage, and then you say, okay, this is the amount of money that we saved by doing that. So this is, of course, as I said, more like the management view of things. Like, okay, I can send that every Friday or every month to my manager, and they're hopefully happy what happens. Or it gives you an idea that maybe you have created a use case and delegated that, and you were expecting, like, okay, this column here should be much higher, and so you could come back and say, okay, asking, okay, why maybe that action is not being used. Maybe you've delegated it to the wrong people, so to speak, or they're not using it, or something should be reconfigured or stuff like that. So this is another aspect where this actually helps. And so we looked, when we start in the beginning, we looked at all the scripts, right, that we need to start things off. Then of course we also need all the credentials, so that we can create PowerShell sessions to whatever backend system. And there we have two ways. One is the credential stored locally in the Windows Credential Store, or like in this case, I have a credential where it's coming from a Pleasant server, in this case a local one. And what we see here is it's just the ID of this credential. So whenever we need to connect to Exchange, we're going to ask this Pleasant server for this ID, for the credential behind this ID, so we get this info back. Also, something that we added since last year is really a more like complete support for PowerShell 7. Even though I have to say, I don't know any customer in my world, so to speak, who's really using PowerShell 7 a lot or even a little bit in production. So, but anyway, you could have, of course, your SSH keys also being managed in ScriptRunner, so you can use PowerShell against Linux. You see that there is some kind of implementation for the PowerShell secret management. It's not, it says experimental, so it's not really there yet. We want to be able to use that, of course, because behind that, as we all know, it can be Azure Key Vault, it can be whatever the community is adding to it. So that's something that we're working on. So that will be another option. But so for today, it's like, okay, it's stored locally, or it's stored in a Windows credential in a password vault, and then you have all these credentials right here. And then of course it's like, okay, I want to do something in Azure. So how do I do that? So the example that we just looked at. So here we have target, and you can create all kinds of targets based on what you can actually do with PowerShell. You can have local execution, you can have PowerShell remoting. You can even combine targets into collections, which helps especially for many systems where you do housekeeping processes. So maybe there's one script that you want to run on 100 servers, and I don't want to pick 100 servers every time I want to do something. So I put all these 100 servers into a collection, and then I'm selecting the collection when I want to do something there. 065 Azure, we also added what we call the generic cloud service, where you could do things like connecting to AWS or Google or something like this, or any other system. Now for Azure, just coming back to the example from just now, there are of course different ways to interact and to establish the session. Of course, it started with having this traditional credential, user, and password thing that I've selected here. But of course, you could have a configuration working with service principal or app registrations to doing this, because as we all know, that's the way it's going to go more and more, of course. We still have support for Azure RM here, so you could decide, okay, I want to do things the old way, not recommended, of course. And so what this target is doing in the background, because we know this is an Azure target, and we know how to establish the session to this backend system, in this case Azure. Of course, we need to have the AC module, but we only have to have it on the ScriptRunner machine, right? Because it's only ScriptRunner who's executing that. So, and you could even say, okay, because maybe you're only doing things with Azure Compute, you can say, okay, I only want to load the Azure Compute module, which of course also helps when it comes to establishing the session, style and loading the modules and the commandlets in the background. So that's something that you can control here as well. And then having this target means, because we configure the logistics, we know which subscription to talk to and how we connect, so what kind of credential we need. In your scripts, you don't need to have this logistics information anymore, like loading the module, establish the session, stuff like that, because that's what ScriptRunner takes care of by using this target in every use case that you want. And if we're coming back to the example that we just saw in the beginning, where I'm just creating a new Azure VM, we can see how all these different bits and pieces fall together, because the action is kind of the bracket, so to speak, that brings all these different bits and pieces into the right order, so to speak. And one very good way to look at this is to use this details view, where you can see all the different objects that are part of this action. So the action says, okay, I want to create a new VM in Azure. I have a target, which is my Azure subscription. I have a credential, which is this account that we have in the background. I have additional library scripts, which we can also take a look at, that helps us to call functions from the main script, and the functions they're just there to create a report, for example. I have the script, the actual main script. Then I have queries. I want to have a list of locations. I want to have a list of VMs that these users should be allowed to see. And then I have delegations, so I can see that this action already got delegated to user help desk, Azure team, and EMEA. Now, what we can do right here is I can click on edit, and I can see, okay, how this actually looks like in the background. So here, this is the first view on, okay, what script do we have in the background? What kind of parameters do we have here? And so this really goes back to this script that we have here. So if we are doing it the old-fashioned way, if we go into Azure Compute, new ACVM, and I'm talking about old school, I'm still into the ISE, don't judge me, please. So this is the underlying script. And then this is where I did this, this funny little change in the script, like, okay, this is of course a stupid thing. I'm storing that, I'm saving it, and when I'm doing a refresh in the browser, I can see immediately that things are changing in the user interface. So this is the underlying script with all the stuff that happens here. And we see, for example, here we call a function that is part of a library script that is there to create a nice little HTML dialog once the VM has been created. So coming back to this one here, is like, okay, so these are all the parameters. And as we saw from the user perspective, maybe coming back to this one here, just to start it again, we can see, we should see, yeah, this one here. We should see we have these 4 parameters here, right? Everything else we don't see, but as we can see in the configuration, of course, things like okay, I even have a predefined resource group name. I have configured that I always want to have static IP addresses and stuff like that. That's all configured, and then I said, okay, I hide this from the user because who cares, right? This is how we want these VMs to be created. That's how we do it. Don't show it to the user. It's just going to confuse them or whatever. And so that's true for all other parameters that we see here. So two things that we see, that I could pick a location. I could pick a location here, and I could pick Azure VM sizes. And that's because instead of making these parameters a plain text input field, which would look like this, right? If I'm running it, then I would just see that, okay, I could type in, I don't know, standard v2, whatever. So number one, the user would have to type it, and we have all the typo stuff. Then maybe somebody would spin up the monster Giga Godzilla VM, and we're gonna pay $10,000 at the end of the month. We don't want that, right? So that's coming back to the point of configuration, control, management, and making sure users are doing the right thing. And that's why here we have a query that's very simply, because it's a static query, it just shows the available VM sizes. And just now we had this dev configuration. That's why we saw 3 VMs. But as a default, I could say, okay, no, the normal user should not be allowed to spin up VM with 16 CPUs or stuff like that, because they should only be allowed to select from 2 VMs. And then you're just doing that. And I'm just configuring that. And so if you have 2 use cases, like, okay, one should have 2 VMs, the other 3 VMs or whatever, or other regions, I'm just making a duplicate of the action, and I'm just plugging in the right query for this group of people. And then if that's all correct, I'm saying, okay, now I can start delegating that to my users. And talking about the delegation, another thing that we have added, which I think is really pretty cool / important, is now I'm switching to another VM here, because this is one that directly running in Azure, that you can now have users that are authenticating based on the Azure Active Directory. Let me just also make this a little bit bigger. So if we talk about how to actually authenticate against ScriptRunner, in the past we had AD, local ID, claim-based identity-based authentication, and now it also can be an Azure AD user. This is how I'm logged in here actually, because it's a VM that runs in Azure. So that's one thing that we have added. So you can still, of course, have AD authentication, but you can also have Azure AD authentication to work with ScriptRunner from the administrative perspective, but also when it comes to delegating stuff. That's what we're looking at right here, right? So and in other cases, if this would be something that should run on a schedule base, of course you could do this as well with every action. You could say, if this is something I want to do every Friday at, I don't know, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and then you configure this action as being scheduled. It still can be done and triggered interactively. So if you have a need for run this now, you can still do it once you have delegated it to somebody. But you can also have it based on a scheduled approach. And interesting enough, we have many companies coming to us where their first priority is to get rid of all this decentralized Windows task scheduler stuff that happens or not happens on all these different machines, and they don't have really control about all these things. And then the delegation to help desk and stuff is also a thing that they're interested in, but their pain more is about getting control and a better way to manage all these different scheduled tasks and actions, as we call them in our case. So that's, of course, something that you can do here as well. And the queries here, we can see two examples here. are one of the most important things really in the whole configuration piece, because it gives you the possibility to make sure the users don't have to type stuff and they can select the right things. And you can differentiate between people who are responsible maybe for different environments, different regions, different subscriptions, different tenants, and again, having the same script still as an underlying foundation, so to speak. And so we have different types of queries. And also one thing that I want to show you is later on that there is, I wanted to go to the queries, Heiko, what are you doing? We have now, in addition to what we had in the past, also direct Azure type queries, which means you could do MS Graph queries within ScriptRunner. You can still do it, of course, based on a script. But now, to make it even easier, you can really use MS Graph or the resource graph, and I will show you an example later on. Just quickly coming back to what we just saw in this use case is, okay, there was a possibility to decide what kind of VMs should be available. And here you could see, okay, this is the list of these 2 VMs. On the left side, that's what the user sees. On the right side, that's the technical information. And in another use case, we saw when I'm selecting this, I'm just having a different selection and a different value. And so we always have this, what does the user see and what is happening in the background technically. The same is true here with the Azure locations. Again, very simple in this case. So these are just the things that the user should be allowed to select. Now, this is a static list because these things don't happen to change every hour. But of course, there are other cases where you want to, let's say you want to have a list of your existing users in your Active Directory, or you want to have, like in this case, I have actually a scripted query that comes back with a list of my Office 365 mailboxes. And by the way, I can test all these queries to see if they're working. And so what happens here is that because this is a query that might take a little bit, because it has to connect to my tenant, and then I have to get back all the information. And I, as a user, I don't want to wait, right? So that's why you can create scheduled queries where you can say, okay, we're running this automatically in the background every 2 hours. And so when the user opens up this dialog, there is already some data there. It's maybe not the latest one, but there's, and if you need a quicker refresh, you can just do that, say, okay, this should run every 30 minutes. And then here, again, you have the content of the current cache with the information on the left side. That's what the user sees. And on the right side, that's the technical information that's being used when we actually execute the scripts and the commandlets and stuff like that. And as I said, we added some additional Azure functionality here. So going back to my VM that I'm running here in Azure, I could have a query that is, in this case, okay, it's looking for room mailboxes, but you get the idea, right? It's about, okay, creating a query that you can use, and also new compared to the ScriptRunner from last year, where you could just have individual values coming back that you can then further use in your script. Now, the whole JSON object can be used. So if I'm running that here, I'm just testing it. Hopefully it's going to work. Yeah, okay. If I'm hover over it, here I can see, okay, that's the actual data that comes back, and I can work with all the data that coming back from this query. So that gives you much more possibilities than just, you need maybe the mail and the display name and some IDs, and here you have the whole JSON object that you can use to take this data and use it in your scripts. And here I have this is just a normal user query, so to speak, but also coming back with the whole JSON data. So everything that Graph is giving me, as we all know, it's not everything that is part of that user, but it's still more than just having an individual parameter or parameter value. So this is really something that helps to better work with the data in Azure, and especially with the Microsoft Graph. But you have multiple options. You could also talk to the resource graph or the data explorer. So as I said, this all, of course, you could already do by scripting something and creating a query script and doing that. And you can still do that, of course. But we just wanted to make it easier and more, also making this more accessible for the admin to work with the MS Graph and the other ways of creating these queries, and to, at the end of the day, to make it easier for the user to pick and choose the right things, and for you to make sure it's the right information that they are presented with. And so that's why we added as another an additional type. That's why we added, as I said, this Azure type into the list of possible queries. And yeah, so all these queries, so the way to use it is really going into the use case, going into the action, and switching a parameter that is maybe just a string input field into something where you want to make sure, okay, the user is allowed to, is only allowed to, for example, like in this case, pick from a list or not from a list, because I think I'm here. So this is an example like, okay, I would have to know that I have this user Angus Young here. Who knows that? So that's why, going back to the edit mode, of course, I go here and I say, no, I want to use this list of mailboxes here. And then now, and here we go, and you can make multiple selections. And here, for example, this is another example for the static list. Static query, because behind that we have a template with text, also including variables like start date and end date, to make sure it's the right information if somebody is, I don't know, out of office or training or sick or whatever. And then again, this is of course something, one of the many use cases that customers are then going to delegate, and then we're coming back to our portal, and the way it's being used right here, so selecting users, template, date time, and whatnot, and then running that action. And again, being so always, if the user does something, it's not the user is running the script, it is the user is triggering the script, right? So that's the big difference, because the user never ever touches any PowerShell stuff or needs to have any access again to this backend systems. It's really all managed once the user triggers this button, and then the things are happening in the background. And again, we can even see in real time, if we're now going to the dashboard, we could see that there is something. You can see the wheel turning here, so you can see, okay, there is something happening. And so you could even look at this in real time, or of course, more often you look at the end of if something went wrong, or how long did it take, or you want to make a report about a specific target or something from this this matter, so to speak. So what else did we do since we looked at it last year? So we looked at the Azure authentication, we looked at the different kind of queries, and now the new portal, which is a role-based one. We looked at the portal widget and the efficiency dashboard, PowerShell 7. As I said, it's there, but it's kind of really, I would say it's kind of waiting there to be used, because it's I would say 99% of the people I talk to still are more or less in the Windows PowerShell world, which is okay, right? But what you can do is, depending on if it's supported by PowerShell 7 and you have the right data, you can switch a Windows PowerShell action into a PowerShell 7 action. And you can switch also a target, I think. No, it wasn't a target, it was a query. It was the query. Into using PowerShell 7 instead of Windows PowerShell. But as I said, it is really something that we've added, but it's not really, it doesn't see a lot of adoption. Let me put it this way. Just to show you also what we are going to publish, I hope by the end of this week. So coming back to this other machine where I just did a plain new installation. And I told you about this journey that we are on to kind of get rid of the admin app and to put everything into the portal. And one thing that we have added now, which actually hadn't been in the admin portal, but it's really useful, is a real-time monitor to get information about the activities of users triggering scripts. Maybe we can just try to trigger a few scripts here, 2 actions, and then we should see some things happening here. Hopefully, let's look at this one. Yes, okay, here's here. So you can see a running action. That's of course okay. But I hope you get the idea. It's like, okay, there is something happening. I can see it. I can also see if I have queued actions. And queued actions is something also new. And this has to do with how many connections do we want to allow ScriptRunner to use when they work with Office 365, for example, because obviously there are limitations by the number of connections that you can use. And by the way, when that's still running, you can also stop the execution right here, and you see also the detailed information about the report, which later on is going to be, of course, stored in the report for history reasons, so to speak, but you can also look at this in real time right here. Yeah, queued activities is really when you say, okay, I have a target and I want to limit the number of connections that ScriptRunner should be allowed to use. And then, well, let's say this would be an Office 365 one. And then you can say, okay, I want to only allow 5 connections. And once that's being reached, I want to queue that execution until we have another slot available so this script can be executed. And if you reach that connection limit and then we start queuing activities, then you will see that appearing here in the queued action area, which I think is also a pretty cool thing. And of course, it works also if you have, I mean, now it's just one machine. If you have multiple ScriptRunner machines, the monitor here will show you the activities from all these machines that are part of your configuration. And something else that we added is now you can have the help directly integrated into the user interface. This is something we're really heavily working on, because this is, if people looking at our solution and if they are able to find some weak spots, it would be like documentation, and we're hired a few people to become much better there. And one of the results we already see here. So we're going to have a help into built into the interface. Actually, it's either going online to our help system, and if you're offline, we can switch to the PDF version of that information, and then you can use it as well. Of course, the online one is more up to date because we can really make changes there and add new stuff on a daily basis, at least theoretically. All right, so these are things that we are working on, and well, the overall idea really is to take this great PowerShell technology and to really turn it into something that everybody can use interactively, or it helps people who are maybe in the starting point of using PowerShell, and to take more and more use cases and make them available with PowerShell. And then having these 3 ways of triggering scripts, I think is another great thing. We looked at 2 already: interactive, scheduled. The third one is using our connectors, where you can allow a system, like I have a monitoring system running here from PIDG. I'm allowing the system to talk to ScriptRunner. It has to authenticate, of course, and then based on the authentication, we check if this system is allowed to trigger whatever they want to trigger. And then you have this fully automated approach and connection between, whatever system is able to talk REST. And even if we have, we happen to have customers that have kind of legacy systems not able to talk REST, we also have what we call an email inbound connector, where the ScriptRunner is kind of monitoring an IMAP mailbox constantly, and this is another way of kind of sending us tickets to run scripts with this and this parameters. So this is also something that we can do in these use cases if REST is not possible. And again, all these activities ending up in the centralized dashboard, and gives you the complete overview about all these PowerShell activities. And that's, again, coming back to the centralization idea from the beginning, is really the key to all that. And so what we see with our customers, they typically start with doing things with Active Directory. That's kind of the classic, right? Doing AD stuff, creating users, Exchange, O365, Teams, Azure, VMware. So it's because as Jeffrey Snow always says, PowerShell is this glue between all the systems. That's why it is like the same with ScriptRunner, because everything that you can do with PowerShell, you can easily make available in ScriptRunner and make it a solution that, again, really, you can manage it properly, you can delegate it properly. It's all been done in a secure way, and that opens up, I think, really possibilities to do much more with PowerShell. And things that are really, then once you started to use ScriptRunner and the queries and stuff like that, things that are really become interesting and helpful is, like, for example, you could have, because we talked about these queries, you could have cascading queries where you kind of lead the user step by step. Like in this case, very simple one for AD. I'm selecting an OU path. Once I've done that, then I get the groups of this OU, and once I have selected that, I can see the members of this group, and that is really leading the user step by step. So, and this is very simple, because it's just you can have a query being configured as used in a cascading way. And then what you're doing here, you're just saying, okay, what's the search space of the second query? It is based on the result of the OU path. And the third one is based on my second selection, which is a $group. And in another use case, it could be, I don't know, the top one could be your Hyper-V server, and then your VMs. And the third one could be the existing snapshots, just to enable somebody to restore to a particular snapshot, for example, or SharePoint farm, SharePoint site, and whatever. So this really opens up the great way, maybe also for maybe not complex, but more sophisticated use cases, to really make sure, okay, I can make it easy for the user, just selecting whatever I want them to be able to select, and for me to use that wherever it's necessary. And which also, when talking about simplification, also means the way that you manage your scripts. I mean, we talked about this main script, so to speak. So you want to do something, then we quickly covered this query script, but there are a third way or third type of scripts, and that is the library scripts. And so what you can do here is that, so in this case, because at the end of this process, I wanted to show this nice little HTML page or report. I have put these functions into this library scripts, and whenever I need that, I can just activate this option here in each and every action where it makes sense to say, okay, I want to preload the functions of this script, and so they become available immediately, and I just can use them from the main script, and I don't have to worry about I don't have to put these functions into the main script over and over again, of course. So it's again talking about centralization and stuff like that. So this is really another way of simplifying the whole concept and the way of how you manage your scripts. And again, coming back to simplifying and kind of streamlining your main script, so then there don't need to be any logistic information in there because that's done by the targets. You don't have to have your functions in each and every script because you can put them into library scripts. And so your main script is really focusing on what you want to get done, and the logistics around it are managed centrally as well. And I think that's really a very helpful approach to also, maybe kind of, we see that with some customers kind of changing the way they develop scripts compared to what they did in the past, where they maybe put everything into one script and then that's the golden script and we need this, and when we make changes, we don't know how it's going to affect other things. So using this library scripts and the functions, and that really can become a way to kind of be more clear about the structure of your scripts and the way you manage and you store them and stuff like that. All right. So with this, I think from what I wanted to show you today, I think that would be it. Are there questions?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. All right. So I've got one of the questions that was asked online was with regards to the code compare. Is when the code is stored on the backend, is it using Git?
No. Okay. So by default, that they are stored locally on the ScriptRunner box. So we have a folder structure where these scripts are stored physically. The integration with Git, so to speak, to combination with ScriptRunner, is like really having a synchronization process where we can say, okay, we want to take a look at a particular branch every hour, for example. So what you can do here is you can say, okay, this is my GitHub repo, this is my branch, this is my target folder, and then we are going to look at this GitHub repo any given time right here to find out if there's a new script or if there's an updated script. So if your way of working with scripts is like, okay, everything goes on CI/CD and code management in Git, then you would most probably not enable this feature to modify scripts via the portal, because that would kind of undermine your whole process. So you would say, okay, ScriptRunner is going to be only on the receiving end of the things that you have organized already in Git. If the way that you develop is different, and you would say, okay, I want to do that kind of locally, then you would use the portal, and you would kind of the result of your changes will be reflected in that folder structure. That makes sense.
Oh yeah, it was just around the. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Yep, it was just around the web server and database support for ScriptRunner. I know you were talking about changing that last time we caught up, or at least making some changes. Is there any news on that front?
You mean when it comes to the underlying web service or web web server.
That's right. Yeah, I think it ran last time we spoke. I think it ran on IIS and it was a backend
Yes.
of SQL Server. Is there any changes
Yeah.
there, or is that still the same?
At the moment, that's the same, but it's a good question because we are in the long run. We're going to see, I would say, a totally different architecture, which will also include support for things like MongoDB and stuff like that, and which will kind of brings us to scenarios like ScriptRunner as a service, blah blah blah, which I cannot talk about in detail yet because it's a journey, but there definitely going to be changes in the architecture that will allow us into getting into this world of also containers and stuff like that. We're on the way there.
Yeah, awesome.
All right. Anything else? People fell asleep. It's how late is it over there in Australia at the moment?
It's only 7:30 at night. Yeah, it's not too bad.
Okay. Just before the news.
Yeah. What time is it there where you are?
It's 11:25 in the morning.
Oh, okay.
Almost lunchtime.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I don't think well, yeah, I don't watch the news, so just generally most audiences just read it online. So yeah. I think that's about it. I don't have any questions that are being asked online. There was only that one. So I might as well wrap it up there. Thank you. Every time that you present, I just love, it's just so great. And I always love to see all the features that keep getting added to the ScriptRunner platform. And it's just, I was saying to Wayne earlier, I'm so glad, I actually accidentally double booked it, and I was so glad that I joined, because I was just thinking, it's just seeing the new features it's so great. There's so many awesome new things that continue to get added to that platform that just,
even that really basic one, like being able to query the graph API. That's awesome.
Yeah, I saw that and I just thought that it just makes sense. There's so many features in there that just make sense. That really, and the thing and it just really abstracts away the complexity of running PowerShell to just to simplify the end user experience. Anyway.
Yeah, I think that's really one of the key aspects, really, for many organizations, definitely.
Yep. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap it up online. Just quickly ask the online audience: is there any other questions that you guys want to ask? Okay.
One more question in the chat there. Sorry, from Peter. Heiko, if you can read that one.
Yeah, in regards PowerShell 7 and Linux, right? So as I said, for using PowerShell with Linux, of course, what you would need to create, and what you can do obviously with ScriptRunner, is you can create your credential for the with the SSH key. So and then you can, of course, you create your target using this SSH credential, and then you can use it in your actions. So it kind of a multi-step approach. So we need to have the SSH credential. We need to have the target where you can configure to actually connect to your Linux boxes with the credential, and then you would then configure your action in the sense of, okay, I will not use Windows PowerShell, I will use PowerShell 7, and we actually we're bringing PowerShell 7 Windows PowerShell 7 version with the installation. So when you install ScriptRunner on a box and you don't have PowerShell 7 on it, there will be one and that's the one that we're using when you're installing ScriptRunner, and then that's why you can just switch to PowerShell 7 pretty easily in the action. And the other actions, because you said 50% of Linux, and for the other ones you could still keep it in using Windows PowerShell, and for the other ones you're using PowerShell 7 with your Linux target together with the SSH credential. And so this is how you can kind of mix and match these different environments, so to speak.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Alrighty, I'm going to end it there for tonight. Huge thank you to everyone for attending, and yeah, we'll hope to see you guys next month. Anyway, bye for now.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Heiko.
Thank you.